Humble pronouns at the Lotus Feet of my beloved Swami and Om Sai Ram. Om Sai Ram to Br Reuben Naidoo, who will be interviewing today.
Sai Rams.
Okay, so Br Reuben, first I'd just like to ask you to introduce yourself, what center and region you belong to, and what you did or what job you had, or just something about yourself, small about yourself.
On Sai Ram, like as you said, I'm Reuben Naidoo. I belong to the Amsterdam Sai Center in Chatsworth Region 2. I've been an educator and recently retired as a school principal. But in the main, I've been involved in the education wing of the Sai organization for the last three decades or so.
Okay, so 3 decades is a long time. So you answered my next question actually, which was going to be how long you've been in the organization. So, okay, maybe let's go into what made you join the organization.
Alright, look, my story with Swami goes very, very far back. I think I was about 11 years old. So we're looking at very early 1970s.
We'll cut that part.
Okay. But it was only 19 years later, in 1991, that I really came into Sai fold through a very tragic incident that happened in our family. And after 19 years of being introduced to Swami, on that particular night I called out to him, and he had answered my call, and I never looked back. And so one day I just happened to come into the Amsterdam area because Mr. BT, the late Mr. BT Patha's daughter, was a colleague of mine. And so I came to visit her, and I heard these bhajans going on at their venue. And my wife and I decided that let's just go and sit and listen to it. And I went there and I sat and I listened, and of course I was hooked. And that was the start. Needless to say that I only heard later that it wasn't necessarily a bhajan session, but it was a bhajan practice session. To think that a practice session could have drawn me to Swami. And yes, and from that fateful day in May, when I went to the Patha's residence, I never looked back.
Okay.
That was May 1991.
May 1991. Some time ago. Okay, and have you been to Prashanti Lily? And how many times?
I've been to Prashanti about 14 times. Yeah, 14 times. Yes. My first trip was in 1993, and of course my last trip was in the year 2019. And due to COVID, we haven't gone back, and I'm really looking forward to my next trip.
Okay. And what was your first thought of the ashram when you went and you experienced it?
Okay. For me, it was quite an anticlimax. You know, I know the politically correct thing to say is that I went there and I saw Swami for the first time and he came floating out, and those are the things we hear people say. I did not have that kind of experience. When I saw Swami for the first time, I have to confess that my first thought was, my God, this feels so ordinary. I didn't feel any of the things that people said that they felt. Until he walked in the darshan, and he came and he stood and he looked right at me, my very, very first darshan. He looked right at me and the energy hit me like a thunderbolt. Yes, and I never looked back. And I think I still live with that kind of energy that he gave me in my very first darshan.
It's powerful. And besides this, have you had any personal experiences with Swami or personal encounters or what we say divine intervention coming? Have you had any experiences of this?
I think I've had many divine interventions. What I can say is that through many of his interventions, he allowed me to grow in the organization. I think my role in the organization has largely been through his interventions. And, when you are an officer in the organization, and I've had many positions, when you are an officer in the organization, you reach a certain point where he puts certain obstacles in your path and you say, okay, I've had enough of this. And maybe I should be doing something else. And over many, many years, every time I said I had enough of this Swami, I think I need to do something else. He threw something else at me and he gave me another position and I had to move on. So I think through all of those divine interventions, I just grew. On a personal level, it's transformed me tremendously. Absolutely. I was like, 31 years ago, I was a man of the world. Enjoying life, really enjoying life. I loved my partying and the nightlife and socializing. I loved all of that. But after coming into the fold, I realized, look, there was something else to life, something more beautiful, more exciting, more meaningful. I think my transformation is possibly the biggest miracle that my family will say that has happened to me because I've transformed so much.
Okay, so he kept drawing you back and he kept you, can I say, interested at all times?
At all times.
Okay, that's great. And you said you were quite, you held many positions. Which positions did you maybe hold in the organization?
Okay, Prajan, when I started off 31 years ago, my very, very first job at the Yamshajasana Sai Center was to take a register. In those days at our center, we had a chalkboard. And at the end of every bhajan session, I would go to the chalkboard and write down the roll for the day. Number of males present, number of females, number of children present, and total number. Like they say, where you see in the school chalkboards. That was my first job. Then after that, I became the center education coordinator, center vice chairperson, center chairperson, regional education coordinator, regional vice chairperson, regional chairperson, area coordinator, and eventually national education coordinator. So I went right from the bottom to every rung.
You worked your way up.
I worked my way up. Well, Swami worked me up. Yes.
And it shows now how much we've actually got back in time now, because now we're back in times of taking registers again due to COVID.
And I'm making sure I'm present.
Okay, so, holding so many positions, you've been a leader and held a leadership position for so many years. What advice would you give future leaders coming up or just new devotees joining our organization?
Okay. I think firstly I'd like to say to people that all of us make mistakes. It's not that because we are in the Sai fold that we are all expected to be perfect. We must embrace our imperfections. What advice I would like to give to especially the youngsters coming in is that we know that youngsters have many flaws. Adults, seniors have many flaws as well. And don't let that push you away or feel that you don't belong or that you're not good enough. Swami invites everyone into his organization and into his fold when the time is right. And he invites you with all those flaws. So I would say that you come in with those flaws, but try as hard as possible to correct them. And even if it's taking longer than what you would expect to be corrected, stay at it, persevere, and eventually things will come right. There are certain things about me, when I had my imperfections that I brought into the Sai fold 31 years ago, that I still live with now. While there are other things that I managed to cancel out of my life. They just disappeared. So it's not that I gave them up. It's just that Swami allowed them to move away from my life at a certain time. But through all of that, I learned and I grew. And that is what's so important. So my advice is, don't be concerned about your imperfections. None of us is perfect. And that when you come in, just place it all at Swami's feet and He will take care of it. The second thing I'd like to say is that try as far as possible to follow Swami's teachings. Don't just leave it to the textbook or to theory. It's difficult to follow all of it. After many, many lifetimes of this nonsense that we have performed, we can't just get rid of all of it in one shot. Rome was not built in one day. So, yes, just be disciplined. Try to practice at least one of his teachings. And eventually, when you practice one, you'll find that all the links just start coming together. And that's the advice that I can give.
No, that's very, very good. I'm sure viewers that are going to be viewing this video will take a lot of heart from that. So you said that you were an educator. I know that you were actually a principal as well. So maybe a bit of advice of how you maybe incorporated what you learned in the organization and from Swami into your everyday working life.
Okay. So it is very difficult to separate the Sai devotee from the principal. I had to be the same person. As a principal, I had to be a Sai devotee. A principled principal, practicing Swami's values. That is what I had to be. I couldn't be two people. So, look, the things that he asked us to do, in the morning I would practice my silence and I would do my light meditation. So the first thing I would do when I go into my office is I would sit in my chair and I would just send love and light to my entire school. I would just imagine all my children and all my classrooms and all my teachers and send them Swami's love and light. That's the one thing I would do. Unbeknown to people on my staff, I would also take walks in school in the morning. And while I walk all around the school, perimeter of the school, which a lot of children found very odd, but I would chant, silently. I would say the Gayatri mantra as I walk around my school. And although we have never been financially secure in all the times that I was there, it was always a battle for finances. But there was never a time when any child at the school was short of anything. Where the money came in to provide the needs was, of course, Swami's grace. Then thirdly, I introduced, in some way or the other, human values education in the school. I got the teachers, we introduced silent sitting and storytelling and group activities and group singing, quotations, and all of those transformation techniques that Swami speaks about. I introduced that to my learners. And I used to also do these bits of teachings in my staff meetings. Yeah, but most importantly, I felt that my role as a principal was to be an exemplar. I tried as hard as possible to be that. I made mistakes. There's no doubt about that. I did sometimes, and I asked Swami to forgive me. But by far and large, that is how I tried to bring my Sai teachings into my job.
Thanks for that, Uncle Reuben. And thank you for this experience to actually give your view, because myself personally listen to you at a center level almost every month. So it's actually good that this can be shown to others out there and others in the organization. They can really get some pearls of wisdom from what you shared with us.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Sai Rams.
Thanks for the opportunity. Sathya.